The frosting rose on the birthday cake blurred as my vision tunneled, each golden letter of my sister's name sharpening while everything else dissolved. "Happy 18th birthday, Rachel!" The crowd cheered, but they were looking at Quinn, not me. The sparklers in my hands suddenly felt like ice against my palms as the reality sliced through the summer heat. This was my birthday party, in my backyard, with my guest list, celebrating her. My mother's hand found my shoulder, her grip firm enough to keep me planted beside the dessert table. "Just smile and clap, sweetheart," she whispered against my ear. "Quinn needs this boost after her college rejection. You understand, right?" The words hit like a physical blow, stealing my breath while party guests lifted their phones to capture Quinn's moment under lights I'd spent the afternoon stringing. The taste of copper filled my mouth as I bit down on my tongue, the only thing keeping me from screaming. Every decoration I'd carefully arranged, every playlist I'd curated, every detail I'd obsessed over for weeks, all of it now served as the backdrop for my sister's manufactured celebration, while I stood invisible in my own space. My name is Rachel. I'm 18 and an artist. This is the story of how I learned that being seen isn't a gift. It's something you have to build yourself. The pattern had been forming for years like sediment building at the bottom of a lake, so gradual I barely noticed until it became impossible to ignore Quinn, commanded attention the way some people commanded silence, effortlessly, completely, leaving no room for anyone else to exist in the same moment. Even as children, she never had to ask for the spotlight. It simply found her, drawn by her bright laugh and bold gestures, while I learned to navigate around its edges. I remember being 12 and spending weeks on a watercolor painting for the school art fair. I'd captured our neighbor's garden in soft blues and greens, each petal detailed with patience that made my fingers ache. When awards were announced, I stood on my toes searching for my piece among the winners. Quinn's pottery project, thrown together the night before with me helping her steady the clay, took first place. My painting hung in the back corner, a participation ribbon barely visible beneath the frame. "Art takes talent," Dad had said that night, ruffling Quinn's hair while she displayed her blue ribbon. "But some people are just naturally gifted." His eyes landed on me briefly before returning to her glowing face. I folded my ribbon in half and slipped it into my pocket, the sharp crease cutting into my palm. That became our family's unspoken law. Quinn shined, and I provided the backdrop. When relatives visited, their attention gravitated toward her like metal to a magnet. "How's cheerleading, Quinn?" "Tell us about your boyfriend. You're going to be homecoming queen, aren't you?" My accomplishments became pleasant footnotes mentioned in passing before conversations returned to her orbit. High school intensified the imbalance. Quinn dated the quarterback, starred in school musicals, and collected friends like souvenirs from each social circle she conquered. I found refuge in the art room, spending lunch periods sketching while she held court in the cafeteria. Mrs. Hoffman, my art teacher, became the first person to look at my work with genuine attention. "You see things differently," she told me one afternoon, studying a charcoal drawing I'd made of hands holding a broken photograph. "Most students draw what they think they should see. You draw what's actually there, the spaces between things, the weight of what's missing." Her words planted something in my chest that I carried home like a secret, but even my art became another stage for Quinn's performance. When my portfolio earned recognition at a regional competition, Quinn announced her plan to minor in art at college. "Rachel inspired me," she told everyone at dinner, as if my 4 years of dedicated work had been a warm-up act for her sudden interest. My parents beamed with pride at her artistic awakening, while my own achievement became the stepping stone to her narrative. The month before our birthday, I'd been accepted to Parsons School of Design with a partial scholarship. I'd kept the acceptance letter in my sketchbook, unsure how to announce something so significant in a house where Quinn's victories always took center stage. Finally, I'd decided our shared birthday party would be the perfect moment to tell everyone. The irony wasn't lost on me now, standing beside a cake that bore only her name, while my secret remained locked away. I'd spent weeks planning every detail of this party. The guest list balanced friends from both our circles, the playlist included songs we both loved, and the decorations reflected our shared memories. Growing up in this house, I'd envisioned a celebration that honored both of us, maybe even creating space for me to announce my college acceptance. Instead, I watched Quinn blow out 18 candles on a cake that was supposed to represent both our birthdays, but had been rewritten to celebrate only hers. The final betrayal came when someone asked about college plans. "Quinn's exploring her options," Dad answered, his arm around her shoulders. "She's got such creative potential." No one mentioned my acceptance letter or the scholarship I'd earned. No one thought to ask what the other birthday girl might be doing with her future. I was the sister-shaped absence in the conversation. Present but not acknowledged. Seen but not celebrated. As the evening wore on, I found myself moving through the party like a ghost in my own life. Guests handed Quinn wrapped presents while I collected empty plates. People complimented her dress while I straightened the decorations I'd hung that morning. The music I'd chosen provided the soundtrack for her moment while I retreated further into the background, my presence essential but invisible. When the sparklers came out for photos, I watched from the kitchen window as everyone gathered around Quinn, their faces illuminated by tiny stars they held in her honor. The image burned itself into my memory. My sister surrounded by light while I stood alone in the darkness, separated by glass from a celebration that should have been mine too. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I didn't storm out or make a scene. I simply walked upstairs, packed a bag with my sketchbook, my acceptance letter, and the money I'd saved from my part-time job, and left through the front door while everyone was still in the backyard capturing Quinn's perfect moments. The bus to New York left at midnight from downtown. I bought a one-way ticket and settled into a window seat as the city lights faded behind us. My phone buzzed with messages, but I turned it off and pressed my face against the cool glass. For the first time in 18 years, no one was asking me to smile for someone else's photograph or step aside for someone else's moment. The road ahead was dark, but it was mine. I arrived in Manhattan with $600, a duffel bag, and the absolute certainty that I would never again stand invisible in a room full of people who were supposed to love me. Queens became my launching pad, a tiny studio apartment that cost most of my savings, but came with something I'd never had before. Space that was entirely my own. The first months blurred together in a symphony of survival. Early morning shifts at a coffee shop in Soho, afternoons at Parsons learning to translate my vision into professional techniques, and evenings in my studio apartment turned workshop, building furniture from salvaged materials and designing spaces that felt like breathing. I lived on ramen and determination, each day a small victory in the architecture of independence I was constructing. My breakthrough came through an interior design internship with Marcus Rivera, whose minimalist approach to residential spaces had earned him recognition in Architectural Digest. He saw something in my portfolio that resonated with his philosophy of creating homes that told their inhabitants stories, rather than shouting about the designer's ego. "You understand negative space," he told me during my interview, studying sketches I'd made of my cramped apartment transformed into a functional living space. Most designers fill every corner with their ideas. You create room for people to exist. The internship paid almost nothing, but it connected me to a world where my vision mattered, where the spaces between things held as much importance as the objects themselves. 3 years of 18-hour days, weekend workshops, and relentless skill building transformed me from the invisible sister into Rachel Summer, interior designer. My portfolio grew to include loft renovations in Tribeca, boutique hotel lobbies in the Village, and residential projects for clients who wanted homes that felt authentically theirs rather than magazine perfect. The day I signed the lease for my own studio space in Chelsea, I called my parents for the first time since leaving. Quinn answered instead, "Rachel? Oh my God, where are you? Mom's been worried sick." Her voice carried the same dramatic flair that had always commanded attention, but now it sounded hollow against the concrete walls of my new studio. "I'm in New York," I said simply. "I'm fine." "New York? Doing what? Are you coming home?" The questions tumbled out like she was reading from a script, hitting all the expected beats without genuine curiosity about my answers. "I'm building a life," I told her. "Send my love to Mom and Dad." I hung up before she could respond and turned back to measuring wall space from my drafting table. The conversation felt like looking at my old life through frosted glass, recognizable but distant, important once, but no longer urgent. My studio became my sanctuary and my laboratory, a space where I could experiment with the interplay of light and texture that had fascinated me since childhood. Clients began requesting me by name, drawn to interior spaces that felt intentionally curated rather than casually assembled. My approach focused on revealing the inherent character of each space rather than imposing my aesthetic upon it. And that philosophy resonated with people who wanted homes that reflected their lives rather than design trends. The TED Talk invitation came through a former client who worked in media production. Invisible Spaces, Designing for the Overlooked, became my platform to discuss how interior design could honor the people who actually inhabit spaces rather than the guests who occasionally admire them. I never mentioned my family directly, but I spoke about the power of creating environments where every person feels seen, valued, and celebrated. The response overwhelmed me. The video went viral within days, shared by people who recognized their own experiences of being overlooked, undervalued, or made invisible in their own lives. Design blogs featured my work, lifestyle magazines requested interviews, and potential clients reached out from across the country. My calendar filled with projects that allowed me to create spaces where people could finally exhale. Then Quinn found the video. Her response came in the form of a social media post that went live while I was meeting with a client in my Chelsea studio. "Sometimes family members exaggerate stories for attention," she wrote, accompanied by childhood photos of us together. "We always supported each other's dreams. It's sad when success requires rewriting history." The post included links to her own social media accounts, an obvious attempt to redirect attention toward her own creative pursuits. But social media has a way of fact-checking narratives in real time. Within hours, people began sharing their own stories of invisible siblings and forgotten birthdays. Comments poured in from people who recognized the patterns I'd described, and Quinn's defensive post only amplified interest in my story. Her attempt to diminish my experience backfired spectacularly, drawing more attention to the very dynamics she was trying to deny. The irony wasn't lost on me. Quinn's desperate grab for attention had created the exact situation she was trying to prevent. My TED Talk gained millions of additional views, my studio booked months in advance, and major publications began featuring my work as an example of design that honors authentic human experience rather than artificial perfection. Meanwhile, Quinn's own social media presence began to collapse under the scrutiny her post had invited. People noticed the gap between her public image and her defensive reactions, and brands started distancing themselves from someone who appeared to dismiss other people's experiences of being overlooked. Her follower count dropped as her engagement plummeted, creating a spiral that fed on itself. I didn't celebrate her downfall because I'd stopped measuring my success against her failures. My work spoke for itself now. In the Manhattan penthouse, where I'd created reading nooks that encouraged quiet contemplation, in the Brooklyn brownstone, where I'd designed a kitchen that brought 3 generations together around shared meals, in the boutique hotel lobby where travelers felt welcomed rather than impressed. Each project represented another person who now had space to be seen. The studio expansion happened naturally as demand grew. I hired 3 junior designers who shared my philosophy of creating environments that served the people who lived in them rather than the people who might photograph them. We developed a signature approach that combined minimalist aesthetics with maximum functionality, proving that beautiful spaces could also be deeply livable. 5 years after leaving that birthday party, I received a letter forwarded through my old address. Quinn had written to apologize, explaining that she'd finally understood how our family dynamics had affected me. The letter was thoughtful and seemed genuine, but it arrived at a moment when I was designing a children's playroom that would encourage creativity and individual expression. I was no longer the girl who needed her sister's acknowledgement to feel valid. I wrote back. A brief, kind response that acknowledged her letter without reopening old wounds. Some chapters close not with dramatic confrontations, but with the quiet recognition that everyone has grown beyond the roles they once played. Quinn and I would never be close, but we no longer needed to be adversaries. We'd simply become two adults who happened to share a childhood. The Rachel who left that party 5 years ago had been running away from invisibility. The Rachel who opened her letter had been running towards something much more powerful: the ability to create spaces where everyone could be seen. My sister's apology mattered less than the fact that I no longer needed it to feel whole. Today, my studio occupies 3 floors in Chelsea. My team has expanded to 12 designers, and my client list includes celebrities, Fortune 500 executives, and families who want homes that reflect their values rather than their wealth. But the project that means most to me is the scholarship fund I established for overlooked young artists, kids whose talents get overshadowed by louder voices in their families or communities. Every month, I visit the recipients to see their work and offer mentorship. I recognize something familiar in their eyes: the hunger to be seen, the determination to create space for their vision in a world that seems designed for other people's voices. I never tell them about birthday parties or sisters who commanded attention. Instead, I show them how to build something beautiful from the experience of being overlooked. The girl who stood invisible beside her own birthday cake has become a woman who designs visibility for others. That transformation didn't happen in a single moment of revenge or confrontation. It happened in countless decisions to keep building, keep creating, and keep honoring the spaces between what people see and what actually exists. Some nights, I sit in my studio after everyone has gone home, surrounded by drawings of spaces that will soon help people feel more at home in their own lives. The city lights filter through tall windows, casting shadows that shift and change as evening deepens into night. I think about the 18-year-old who left everything familiar because she finally understood that being seen isn't something you can ask for. It's something you have to construct yourself, carefully and deliberately, until the space you occupy becomes impossible to ignore. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.